Bienvenidos amigos, estamos a punto de iniciar la charla con Keith Ochwat, que está ya con nosotros. Estamos en Cinemanía, la charla va a comenzar en unos momentos y aprovechamos para tener aquí unos momentos antes de esta conferencia para platicar con él acerca de pues este evento tan importante y para poner foco en por qué es importante hablar del cine documental, pero sobre todo de la parte de la distribución. Es muy conocido que la parte de la distribución es uno de los callos, digamos, no solo de nuestra industria, sino de la industria a nivel global, y es por eso que agradecemos aquí tener la oportunidad de tener estas palabras antes. Queremos recordar que esta plática la estamos haciendo, es una colaboración entre la Academia Mexicana de Artes y Ciencias Cinematográficas y Cinemanía Coraje, el cual es el programa de formación de Cinemanía. So, Keith, thank you very much for give us the opportunity to take this interview with you. So I would like to start this talk by asking you, what do you think about the film industry in Mexico, and what is your opinion about documentary filmmakers in our country?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's my first time to Ciudad de Mexico, and I'm here with my wife, and we're really enjoying it. So thank you for your hospitality and for having us and inviting me here today. I think that, Mexican cinema is really exciting. From the American perspective, I'm based in Los Angeles. I've been a documentary filmmaker for 12 years for American Public Television, and I work with filmmakers around the globe. And I'll say that Mexican film has cachet, meaning it has excitement, and there's something really vivid about the way that the Mexican filmmakers I'm familiar with tell their stories. I think the cinematography is almost second to none. It's beautiful, but when it comes to documentary, it's a world I know a little bit less about, and I'm excited to be here today and to learn from you also about the documentary community here in Mexico. And I think that when most Americans think about Mexican cinema, they're thinking about feature films. They're thinking about Roma. They're thinking about other filmmakers that are making a huge global splash. But I think there is so much opportunity for Mexican documentary filmmakers. I love nonfiction film. And Roma is the only film I saw that was nominated for an Academy Award this year, because I don't really like fiction film as much as nonfiction. I'm a nonfiction fanatic. And so I think that Mexico is becoming more of a leader in this region and in the world, and I think that whether it's issues related to migration, whether it's related to the environment, or gender issues, so many different things, the way our cultures are all changing and combining and mixing in really exciting ways, I think that there's so much fertile ground for nonfiction storytelling in Mexico, and I'm so excited to help in any way that I can. And I know that the documentary filmmakers and the trailers I've seen, the films that I've seen have been beautiful, and I think the issues are extremely important. So those are two things that are really important in nonfiction film. So I think it's a good time.
And talking about that, why is important for you to open dialogue with Mexican filmmakers and share your experience with them in this specific topic?
Well, for me personally, I think that I was excited to come here to speak and do my talk that filmmakers in America really appreciate, and the filmmakers I work with around the world, whether it's in Europe or Australia or in Africa. And it's some, I think I have something to offer, but for me, what I'm most excited about is to hear from the filmmakers, because I think that we live in a world that's getting smaller and smaller. And I think in the filmmaking world, the borders don't matter. And I think that issues of dire importance and growing importance are, not going to know the difference between Canada, United States, or Mexico, or over the oceans. I mean, these are global issues that our world is facing, and I think especially filmmakers in our generation, I think as we see the media shift, as we see print newspaper and magazines change and sort of honestly wither in some cases, I think that investigative journalism and documentary can be, happy siblings. And I think that investigative journalism is one part of what makes documentary, and another part is poetry. And I think that, in my understanding, my limited understanding of the Mexican culture, I've met so many poets, and I think that's what's exciting about documentary too. We can look to important issues, and we can look to the art and combine it for important documentary storytelling. So for me to be here today is very exciting, because I'm looking forward to meeting a room of 45 nonfiction filmmakers here from this community.
Of course, thank you. And what is the main idea of this methodology? For example, you have described this method as think the old world versus the new world. So in the whole context of the distribution. So what is the main idea of this methodology?
Well, when you use the trope of the old world and the new world of distribution and what that and the difference, and I'll be going into it further later, but the simple way to say, to describe it is the old world represents a world in which filmmakers had to go through gatekeepers to reach their audience, to make a living, and to generate impact and awareness for their stories. And the new world is a very difficult time because things are changing so fast, and the new world is in some ways bigger and smaller in the sense that we as filmmakers don't have to go through the same gatekeepers. We can go directly to our audience. So it's smaller in the sense that it's more direct. If I make a film about climate change, I can work with activists across the globe through the internet, through social media, through conferences, through partnerships with organizations that are leaders in this, on whatever topic it may be. So it's smaller in that way, but it's larger in the sense that it's global, and so a Mexican documentary filmmaker can connect with a Belgian filmmaker who shares a passion for that topic, whether it's human rights or whether it's something fun, whether it's a love for mimes. There are so many ways that we can, in the new world, we have more power and we have more control. I think the challenge right now in the new world is I don't think filmmakers understand that as much as I don't think they know their own power. And I think that in the old world, filmmakers were basically required to get into to very few channels to get to the world, or get to their country even, let alone the world. So, in America, there were just a few television channels, and then there were some more cable channels. There was no internet. There were only a few different theatrical bookers. If you want to be in theaters, you have to go through a handful of people. If you want money, you have to get money from a handful of places. Now, in the new world, if you want money, you can go to the community that cares about the topic of your film through crowdfunding, Kickstarter, or Indiegogo. If it's audience, you can connect through social media or through the internet, and just emailing someone and sharing your trailer and seeing what happens. And if there's an alignment, magic can happen. And through distributors, we don't have to go through the same three theatrical distributors in America to show our film in theaters. We can go directly to the theater. Theaters are their model is changing also in America and in Mexico and around the world. And so there are different opportunities. So the new world and the old world mean that the old world, there were fewer opportunities, but for those who were the chosen few, there was a lot of potential. In the new world, there are more opportunities. It's democratized in a way. So it's more work because no one's going to do it for us. But it's, I think, a lot more exciting because as independent filmmakers, we can choose our own fate.
Of course. And in that specific context, do you think that the whole parts of the distribution process are ready for implement these ideas?
Yes, I mean, it's happening all over. I mean, it's not that I think, I know. The filmmakers around the world are knowing that you don't have to do what worked in the old world to succeed in the new world. And in fact, not only do you not have to do it, it doesn't really work that much anymore. I've been to Sundance the last 2 years. In January, I saw 29 documentaries. And I could count on one hand how many deals were made, which is what every filmmaker goes there for. Yeah, we want to get the accolades, we want the laurel, we want the press, the prestige, but also we want to make a living with our art, and we want to have our art be shared to an audience. And of those few films that made those deals with Netflix or Amazon or Magnolia or A24, so few that for the other filmmakers, they're still, I think, often these talented, the best filmmakers, some of the best filmmakers in the world are pursuing the old world and not seeing the opportunities in the new world that are there. And the opportunities in the new world that are there that I see firsthand are filmmakers that, yes, go to festivals. Festivals can be great and few can be really good for your career. But also I've found with filmmakers I've worked with, not just Americans, but all over, that conferences can be an excellent way to connect with people who care most about your film. I call them core audiences. You can reach a core audience through a conference, through partnerships, collaborating with a company even that cares about the message of your film and has a big social media following or email list of millions of customers. They may care a lot about your film and want to share it also. There's a lot of creativity out there, and in a time when moving picture is everywhere, we see short videos on our phones, we can stream hundreds of films on Netflix and Amazon and all the platforms online on our TVs. But with film now, you don't have to go through just those channels. There are other ways that I've seen filmmakers get their films out there.
Thank you. What about the collaboration between director and producer, in which you have this idea that the distribution process is not only a work of the producer, but the director?
Okay, well, first of all, I think to be an independent filmmaker, you have to wear a lot of hats. Okay. I think it cracks me up. I laugh when I meet someone who's like, I'm an independent film line producer. I'm like, you can make a living being an independent film line producer? Or like, I'm an independent film cinematographer. That's all I do. It's like, I think either you have a very wealthy wife or husband, or your parents are giving you money, because that's, independent filmmakers, we're used to wearing a lot of hats. We have to be, if the director is the director, that makes sense. If the producer is the producer, that makes sense. But the director is also a fundraiser. When you're making your film, you're going out there and you're trying to find the money to go out and produce. Same with the producer. And I think that, but then we're also the casting directors. As documentary filmmakers, we have to cast. That's the key part of a documentary. And even if a director and a producer hire an editor, often the director and producer also are involved in the editing. But if you're lucky enough to have a professional editor edit your film, you're still going to be a story consultant. You're still going to be an assistant editor. You're still going to have to help that editor understand how to craft the hundreds of hours of footage into 90 minutes. And then so what I'm challenging filmmakers to do is think about distribution as another phase of documentary, of independent film. And the idea is that I think too often filmmakers have in their head that the finish line is getting the picture lock, finishing the film, going to the festival, and you're done, right? And then you can move on. I think that you're halfway through the race at that point. You have to think about the next phase of it. And I think you can find joy in it. It doesn't have to be this terrible slog, that's no fun and is exhausting. But the way I like to see it is, if you think about why you made your film, if you dedicate 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years of your life to tell a story, I assume you care a lot about the story. Care enough about it that you think other people would like to learn about it. Mm-hmm. So I always challenge filmmakers to think about how joyous it can be to connect your film with the people who do want to see your film and will benefit from it, will be educated by it or inspired by it. So that's what I really push filmmakers to do.
Usually filmmakers think about distribution as a whole and similar process from each film. It is for you different, the distribution strategy for a documentary than a fiction?
There are differences. I wish there were. I'll tell you, I think that there are more opportunities now for nonfiction films. And I think it's because most nonfiction films, are at its heart about an issue. Even if it's character driven and there is narrative there and a beautiful story, there often is an issue about, indigenous culture, or about economic, oppression, or about struggling family, or about something positive, and I think that, or music or culture and other positive ways. I think that with nonfiction film, when you can identify what it is the issue that's at the core of what your film is about, it unlocks the opportunity to connect with the people that will care most about your film. And I think that's true with fiction films as well. But it is a little more difficult. And I think the financing is often a bit more difficult. The options are a bit more difficult for fiction versus nonfiction. I think with nonfiction, with documentary, I see a lot of filmmakers, most of the filmmakers I work with do some sort of crowdfunding. They're going to their friends and family, but they're also, promoting their film on social media. They're promoting their film in a way that people can see that it's about an issue they care about and they can contribute to it, become a fan and a supporter, a patron. And I think that people can do that also with fiction film, but usually fiction film is a bit less issue oriented, which I think is a bit more of a challenge. Though, I have seen fiction films that are about topics that are really relevant and interesting, and just even, thinking about Roma, and Roma is a semi-autobiographical, scripted narrative feature, but it's about important issues, and those issues can help unlock where your core audience could be and where funding might be and potentially distribution.
Thank you. And as you know, Cinemanía is an independent and alternative cinema in Mexico City. What's your opinion about these kind of spaces and events like your talk?
They're so essential. And just so you know, we didn't talk about this beforehand, so this is not scripted. But spaces like this are, I'm jealous. I live in Los Angeles. We live in the heart of the film industry. We don't have something like this. You're very lucky to have this, and I think it's really exciting that there's this community that can benefit from this and support this and contribute to this. And I think that this represents community to me versus, the big theaters that to me are more Avengers 25 or Iron Man and those films, like whatever, they have a place for those films, but to me they're not about community. Spaces like this are not just meant for film, but they're for conversation. There's a cafe here, there's the theater space there, you have talks. There's a bar. Yeah, no better way to start conversation than a little alcohol. But I think that spaces like this are really important, and I always encourage filmmakers to not go the traditional theatrical route, because you have 2-hour space. Either you're in a 4-walled theater, rent the theater, or you're going to have your theatrical booker book your film and they have to slot it in their schedule. You have 2 hours. If your film is 90 minutes, then you're going to have 20 minutes to have a Q&A, a conversation. And I think especially documentary needs to be discussed. It's a conversation starter. Sometimes people say, oh, this film is really good, but it didn't tell us the solution. I'm like, it's a 90-minute film, it's an 80-minute film, it's a 70-minute film. It's about it's a catalyst, it's a spark that starts a conversation. So spaces like this, I think, are really effective for conversation. They're typically more flexible in the programming. I think filmmakers are more excited to come speak. I think activists and people who are involved in relevant issues like to be part of panel conversations. And I think not only is it important for the filmmakers and rewarding for the filmmakers to have those conversations, but it's enriching for the audience too. And so I think spaces like this make that happen.
Well, Keith, thank you very much for having the chance to have this conversation with you, and good luck with your talk.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Gracias, amigos. Bueno, pues nos despedimos. Recuerden que pueden consultar todas las actividades que vamos a tener en colaboración con la Academia Mexicana de Artes y Ciencias Cinematográficas y Cinemanía de Coraje a través de las redes de cada institución. Y pues bueno, sin más, nos despedimos y hasta la próxima.